Okay, hello to everybody. Um, we are going to discuss chapter number 1 now. So let me go into the slideshow. Okay, so basically, in the chapter number 1, it's a very introductory chapter, and in this chapter, I am basically going to introduce you to the field of microbiology, and I'm going to discuss about different kinds of microorganisms and how they are classified, and also what are the good parts of the microorganism as well as the bad parts of the microorganisms. Okay, so first of all, what is microbiology? So this is a branch of biology which deals with microorganisms. And what are microorganisms? As the word itself says, they are micro in size, which means they're very small in the size, and we cannot see them with our eyes, so we need to use a microscope to see them. So microorganisms include the various kinds of microorganisms, which include bacteria, archaea, protozoa, fungus, helminths, viruses, and algae. So the different kinds of microorganisms, and we'll be talking about all of them in this course. Okay, microbes are very easy and very difficult to study. Now, why they're easy and why they're difficult? They reproduce quite rapidly. Okay, they divide very fast. So one of the microorganism, it's a bacteria called E. coli, Escherichia coli. Its generation time period is 20 minutes, which means it can duplicate itself in 20 minutes. Okay, so it like if you start at night with this bacteria, you have one single bacteria. In the morning you will have millions of the same kind of bacteria, because the generation time period is only 20 minutes, so they double in 20 minutes. So from 1 they become 2, from 2 4 8 16 32. That's the way it goes. So they can be grown in large populations in the laboratory. As I said, they grow very fast, so you can have millions of bacteria in the you can grow them in the lab. So that is why we can study them very easily. Okay, now why it's difficult to study them? Because they cannot be seen directly. We cannot see them with our eyes, so we have to use microscopes. So they are viewed through microscopes, and they have to be analyzed by indirect means. Okay, these microorganisms, they basically originated from a common ancestor. And actually, if we look around all the living organisms in this biological world, uh, it's considered that all the living organisms we have in the biological world, they can be actually classified into 3 categories, and those categories we call them domains, and they include eukaryotes, bacteria, and archaea. So these are the 3 different categories or 3 different domains in which we can classify all the different living organisms, and they have originated from one common ancestor. They have originated from one common ancestor. So let me tell you a little bit about these different organisms which are in these 3 different domains. Number 1, eukaryotes. Now the eukaryotes are the ones which have true nucleus. Bacteria and archaea, they are the ones which do not have the true nucleus. Okay, so this is also called the tree of life. As I just said, all the living organisms in the biological world, right now I'm not talking about only microorganisms, I'm talking about all the different organisms in this biological world. They can be divided into 3 different categories or 3 different domains. They are called bacteria, archaea, and eukaryotes. So they all have originated from one common ancestor, and this is called the tree of life. Okay, so in the bacteria, they are microorganisms. We'll be studying them in detail. The different kinds of bacteria. They are gram-positive bacteria, gram-negative bacteria, proteobacteria, cyanobacteria. And then the second domain is archaea. So archaea and bacteria actually morphologically, structurally, they are very similar, but archaea have different characteristics. Earlier in the olden time, scientists used to think bacteria and archaea are actually same, and they were put in the same group because they were morphologically same, quite same. But as the science has developed and we have more sophisticated equipment, scientists came to know that these archaea different from the bacteria, and now they have been put into a different group, into a different domain. Okay, that's why all the organisms which are in this domain, they're different from bacteria now. They're different from bacteria Now we know that they're different from bacteria and they're put into different domain called archaea. Then we have the third domain called eukaryotes. So in the eukaryotes we have animals, fungus, plants. So animal. So we human beings, we are considered, we belong to the kingdom Animalia. So we are considered animals, and we belong to the domain eukaryota. Now let me tell you a little bit about these, why they're called eukaryotes. And these bacteria and archaea, they are predominantly single-celled, and bacteria and archaea, they are called prokaryotic organisms. Now, and the third domain is eukaryotes. Now, what this word "eu" means true. Karyota, this karyota word, this karyotes or the karyota word means nucleus. Okay, so the third domain, which is a eukaryota, these are the organisms which have a true nucleus. But this bacteria and archaea, they are called prokaryotic organisms. They do not have the true nucleus. Okay, so eukaryotic organisms, they have true nucleus as well as they have other membrane enclosed organelles. Bacteria and archaea, they are prokaryotic organisms. They do not have true nucleus as well as they do not have other membrane enclosed organelles. So bacteria and archaea, they are predominantly single-celled. Eukaryotes, some of the eukaryotes are single-celled, but there are various eukaryotes which are multicellular organisms, and they are also larger in size. As I said, human beings, we belong into this domain, and we are multicellular. As I just explained, eukaryotic organisms, they have true nucleus as well as they have other membrane enclosed organelles like mitochondria, chloroplast. Nucleus is also membrane enclosed. And in this category, some are microorganisms and some are macroscopic, like we are macroscopic. Bacteria and archaea, they do not have true nucleus. They do not have these kind of organelles, membrane enclosed organelles. They are 10 times smaller than eukaryotes. So bacteria and archaea, they're smaller, and they are all microorganisms. Okay, so eukaryote includes animals, plants, fungi, protozoa, and in the domain bacteria and archaea, it includes bacteria and archaea only, and they have no nucleus and they do not have the membrane enclosed organelles. Now the microbes are ubiquitous, which means they are everywhere. So they are deep in the earth's crust, in polar ice caps and oceans, inside bodies of plants and animals, in the earth's landscape, and they are very essential to life. So we have microorganisms everywhere, but we can't see them because they're microscopic. They're so small. Their size is in the range of nanometers, which is very, very small. So we can't see them. Okay. Now, if we like on our skin, there are various kinds of bacteria living, and they are good for us. So they are considered our normal flora, as well as there are some bacteria which are living in our gut, and they are actually making some vitamins for us. And there are some bacteria which are actually helping in our immune system. They are increasing our immunity. So there are various bacteria living in our system. They are our normal flora, and they are actually good for us. Going back into the history, humans, they have used microbes for various purposes. So now, first of all, I'm going to focus on the good part of the microorganisms, and then we are going to discuss about some of the bad part of the microorganisms, which basically includes the disease part. So they cause us various diseases. First of all, as you know that at home, if you have to make bread, we can use yeast, right? So yeast is not a bacteria. It belongs to the fungus category. And we can use yeast to make bread. Alcohol production, alcohol can be produced by the process of fermentation. It can be done with the help of bacteria, or it can also be done with the help of yeast. Cheese production, various kinds of bacteria involved in the production of cheese. Treatment of wounds and lesions, mining precious metals, cleaning up human created contamination. So if you have seen like if there is an oil spill or something, it can be cleared with the help of microorganisms. So this is all good part of the microorganisms. Microorganisms are also involved in the field of biotechnology. First of all, genetic engineering. So it involves the manipulation of the genetics of microbes, plants and animals for the purpose of creating new products and genetically modified organisms, GMOs. So microbes, they're involved in genetic engineering, recombinant DNA technology. We can use microbes for transferring the genetic material from one organism to another organism. Bioremediation, it involves the use of microbes to clean up some toxic pollutants. So there are various good uses of the microorganisms. Now we're going to talk about some of the bad part of the microbes which can harm humans, and the microbes which harm the human, which causes disease to human, we call them pathogens, or we can call them virulent microorganisms. So there are around 2000 different microbes which can cause diseases, and there are 10 billion infections which occur across the world every year because of the microbes. Infectious diseases are among the most common cause of death worldwide. Actually, the field of infectious disease is quite well studied by now, and they are basically, we have a lot of treatments. In the olden times, people used to die because of infectious diseases, but now with the advancement of science, this field is quite conquered field now. But still, because of the process of evolution going on in nature, after every few months, it's always in the news that this new kind of a virus has come, or this new kind of bacteria has come, and they're affecting so many humans. So I mean, although we do have a control of infectious disease now, but because of the process of evolution, because of all the various recombinations taking place in the genes of the different microorganisms, as well as different processes like horizontal gene transfer, so there is an emergence of new strains of viruses and bacteria, and that is why infectious diseases are still there. Okay, although we have quite conquered this field. The various diseases which can be caused because of microbes includes AIDS, hepatitis C, Zika virus, West Nile virus, and tuberculosis. And these microorganisms are also involved in some of the non-infectious diseases like gastric ulcers. They can be caused by Helicobacter pylori. Helicobacter pylori is a kind of a bacteria, and it can cause ulcers. Then multiple sclerosis, coronary heart disease, and obesity, they are also linked with the microbes. Various viruses which can also cause cancer. Okay, so we just talked about some of the good part of the microorganisms and some of the bad part of the microorganisms, and in the last part of the of this chapter, I would like to focus on the naming part, or the nomenclature part of the microorganisms, how the names are given to these microorganisms, because it's very important to know how the names are given to the microorganisms, because in this course you'll be coming in contact with so many different kinds of microorganisms, so you should know that how they got this name and what does the name actually means. So to understand that, first of all, we need to know some of the terms. The very first term, we need to know what is taxonomy. So what does taxonomy means? It's a science of classifying living things. So what does classification means? Classification basically means grouping or organizing the organisms into two different groups on the basis of their characteristics, so that we can study them easily. Because in this biological world, there are so many different kinds of organisms. We just cannot study each and every organism. Then how to do that? So we can divide the living organisms into different groups on the basis of some of the characteristics, and then we can study those groups. So that is what the science of, or the field of taxonomy means grouping, how we can group the living organisms, how we can classify the living organisms, or how we can organize the living organisms into the different groups on the basis of their characteristics. Nomenclature, the assignment of scientific name for various taxonomical categories and to the individual organism. So it's a way of giving names to the individual organism. So we are going to talk about that. Classification, as I just explained, it's a way of organizing the organisms, the orderly arrangement of organisms into a hierarchy. Identification, the process of discovering and recording traits of living organisms, so that they can be placed in the overall taxonomical scheme. Okay, nomenclature. So as I said, it's a way of giving a scientific name to an organism. Okay, there is a binomial system of nomenclature, which means that the name which is given to an organism has two parts. Okay, the first part, the scientific name which is given, it has two parts. The first name is called the genus name, and the second name is called the species name. So like here is the example of the organism which I just gave you example before also, Escherichia coli. So Escherichia coli is a bacteria. Okay, so this is our this is the example I gave, that this is a bacteria which grows in 20 minutes. Okay, so Escherichia coli is the scientific name of this bacteria. So Escherichia is a genus name and coli is a species name. So how to write it? So if basically when the scientific names are written in print, then they are italicized, or if these names are written by hand, then they are underlined. Okay, or if this name is abbreviated, then the genus name is abbreviated to the first initial followed by a period, and the full species name is written. Like if I have to abbreviate this name, then it's going to be E period coli. Okay, E. coli, then that's the abbreviated form of the scientific name. So how a name is a scientific name is given to organism? It has two parts. First part is called the genus name, and second part is called the species name. So Escherichia is genus name and coli is the species name. Okay, so classification, as I just said, it's a way of classifying, or it's a way of organizing the living organisms, and they are organized into several descending ranks, beginning with the most general and ending with the smallest and most specific. So this is the system of classification. So on the top is a domain, followed by kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, and species. So domain, as we just discussed, all the living organisms, they have been classified into three domains: eukaryota, bacteria, and archaea. Okay, so domain is a very broad category. Okay, so these three domains are on the basis of if they have the nucleus or they don't have the nucleus. Okay, so moving down, going from domain to kingdom, so we keep on becoming more specific, and the category keeps on becoming small. Now here is one example, so let me zoom it, and this is an example of human beings. Okay, so as human beings, we fall in the domain eukaryota. Okay, so why we are eukaryotes? Because our cells, they have a true nucleus, and our kingdom is Animalia. Okay, now why we belong to this kingdom? Because the grouping is on the basis of some of the characteristics. So if you have this characteristic, you go in this category. If you have this characteristic, you go in this category. So why we fall in Animalia? Because we are heterotrophic and mostly multicellular. Heterotrophic means we cannot make our own food. Okay, we ingest food, and we are multicellular. We are not single cellular. We are not unicellular. We are multicellular, and our phylum is Chordata. So why do we belong to this phylum? Because we possess a notochord, dorsal nerve cord, pharyngeal slits. Okay, so that is because of these characteristics we belong to the phylum Chordata. Then our class is Mammalia. We are mammals. Why? Because we possess hair and we also have mammary glands. Our order is primates. Okay, why we are primates? Because we have digital dexterity, we have large cells and slow reproductive rate and long lifespan. Our family is Hominidae. Why we belong to this family? Because we have a large brain, no tail, and long upper limbs. Our genus is Homo, because we have erect posture, large cranium. Because of these characteristics, we belong to this genus. And our species is called sapiens. So our scientific name is Homo sapiens. Okay, so that's all I wanted to let you know in this chapter. So as we will move forward, we will learn various other things in this course, And this was a very introductory chapter. If you have any questions, please let me know, and I will be happy to answer your questions. Thank you.